older workers in their 50s and 60s are facing a quiet but serious threat. New rules under the Trump administration could make it significantly harder for them to qualify for disability benefits, even after decades of paying into the system. Proposed changes to SSDI include more frequent eligibility reviews and stricter medical documentation requirements, potentially leading to a wave of denials, especially for those in physically demanding jobs.
Backhand index pointing right. If this information helped you, don't stop here. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're always one step ahead. We break down important updates like this clearly so you're never caught off guard. Join our community, stay informed, and take control of your financial future, starting today. Flexed Biceps Calendar.
For many, this isn't just red tape. It's a looming financial crisis that could push vulnerable Americans into poverty at the exact moment they need support most. At the same time, there's a parallel fight to increase benefits through a long-overdue policy shift, replacing the outdated CPIW inflation measure with CPIE, which better reflects seniors' real expenses like healthcare and housing. That switch could mean a $300 to $500 increase annually, a lifeline for those already struggling. But nothing is guaranteed. With the COLA announcement delayed and benefit cuts on the table, beneficiaries need to act now. Apply early, gather medical records, contact lawmakers, and speak out. Staying silent isn't safe. Not when the future of Social Security and disability support hangs in the balance. Huge changes are on the horizon for Social Security and disability benefits under the Trump administration. And for millions of Americans, the consequences could be devastating or life-changing, depending entirely on how this moment is handled. We're not just talking about minor adjustments. We're talking about major policy shifts that could affect older workers, people with disabilities, low-income seniors, and every single person relying on Social Security benefits to get by. These changes are already underway, and staying informed, being proactive, and raising your voice has never been more important. The Trump administration has proposed sweeping reforms that aim to reshape how Social Security and disability programs operate. And let's be clear, some of these changes could reduce benefits, restrict eligibility, and create major obstacles for the most vulnerable Americans. But at the same time, there's also an opportunity, if the public acts quickly and forcefully, to push for a more accurate cost of living calculation that could dramatically increase monthly payments for seniors and people with disabilities. The first issue on the table is the delay in the cost of living adjustment, COLA, announcement. Normally, the COLA is announced in early October, giving beneficiaries time to plan for the year ahead. But this year, due to the government shutdown and internal administrative delays, that announcement has been pushed back. On the surface, that might seem like a routine hiccup. But that delay could actually open the door to something big. Why? Because right now, there's a growing debate around how COLA is calculated. Currently, it's based on the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, the CPIW. But that metric doesn't reflect the reality of senior citizens and disabled individuals. It tracks the spending habits of younger urban workers, not people living on fixed incomes who spend more on healthcare, prescriptions, and housing. That's where the CPIE, or the Consumer Price Index for the elderly, comes in. The CPIE takes into account the actual expenses that seniors and disabled individuals face. It emphasizes healthcare costs, rising rent, the price of prescriptions, all of it. And if the government were to adopt CPIE as the standard metric for calculating COLA, the result would be massive. We're talking about annual increases of $300 to $500, instead of the usual $54 to $58. That is not small change. That is the difference between affording medication or skipping doses. That is the difference between food on the table or empty cupboards. This change is possible, but only if there's pressure. If lawmakers hear from their constituents, if public demand swells, if people demand fairness, CPI can become the new standard. But without that pressure, this opportunity will slip through our fingers, and the same flawed CPIW will continue to leave seniors behind year after year. Now, while the potential for larger benefits is one part of the picture, the other part is far more alarming. Proposed cuts to Social Security disability insurance, also known as SSDI. These cuts aren't abstract. They are direct, targeted efforts to make it harder for older Americans and people with disabilities to qualify for help. The Trump administration's proposals would increase scrutiny on applicants, require more frequent reviews, and introduce stricter guidelines that could lead to more denials, especially for older workers in their 50s and 60s who have spent decades in physically demanding jobs. These are people who paid into the system, people who did everything right. And now, under these new proposals, they could be pushed out of the program entirely, denied for benefits they earned, forced into poverty after a lifetime of work. And that's just the start. Low-income seniors receiving Supplemental Security Income, SSI, are also at risk. These policy changes would hit them hardest. A few dollars cut from monthly benefits may not sound like much to a politician in Washington. But for someone living on $900 a month, that cut is catastrophic. That's rent. That's food. That's electricity. These are not distant possibilities. These are changes being proposed right now, and they're gaining momentum. So who is most at risk? Older Americans. Workers nearing retirement age who can't physically continue in their roles. People with long-term medical conditions. Seniors on SSI who rely on these benefits just to survive. These are the people who could see their financial lives unravel. But there's power in numbers. There is still time to act. If you receive disability benefits, or if you're applying, you need to take steps now. Start with your documentation. Every medical appointment, every diagnosis, every prescription. Give it all. Organize it. Make copies. Because if these new rules go through, reviews will become stricter, and appeals will become harder. Without thorough documentation, your claim is at risk. If you've been waiting to apply, don't wait. Get your application in now. Once policy changes take effect, the process could become even more difficult. Apply as early as possible. Prepare your records. Talk to your doctor. Build your case with precision. And if you're already receiving SSDI or SSI, look into additional programs that can help bridge the gap. NAP, Medicaid, local food assistance programs, housing support. These aren't luxuries, they're lifelines. They exist to keep people afloat when government safety nets start to fray. But even with all these support systems in place, there's no substitute for action at the policy level. Because this isn't just about numbers. It's about people. It's about dignity. It's about ensuring that after a lifetime of work, Americans aren't discarded when they need help the most. Social Security and disability benefits have survived countless political fights since their creation in 1935. And they've survived because the people who rely on them refused to be silent. They showed up. They voted. They made calls. They demanded to be heard. And that's exactly what needs to happen now. Especially in large states like California, Florida, and Texas, where the concentration of Social Security recipients is highest. The power of those populations cannot be overstated. Politicians watch those states closely. They care about voter turnout. They care about their re-election. And if they hear from enough people, they will act. That's why sharing this information is so important. That's why speaking up matters. Because one voice turns into 1,000. And 1,000 turns into 1,000,000. And that's how policy changes happen. The fact is, every person on Social Security has a stake in this. Every person with a disability, every low-income senior, every caregiver. This moment affects them all. Whether it's the risk of losing benefits or the chance to finally receive a fair cost of living increase, this moment is critical. And if you do nothing, the consequences will be felt for years. So take these steps now. Call your representatives and demand the switch from CPIW to CPIE. Apply for SSDI or SSI now if you're eligible, before eligibility rules change. Document every medical detail, every visit, every treatment. Keep it organized. Look into other benefit programs that can help you stay financially stable. Talk to your community. Share what's happening. Educate those who are vulnerable. If you found this update helpful, hit that like button so more people can see it. Share it with someone who needs to know. Leave a comment if you've been affected, or if you're worried about what these changes could mean for you. And subscribe so you stay updated every time something new develops. Because things are moving fast. And the only way to stay protected is to stay informed. Social Security and disability programs are not handouts. They are not luxuries. They are earned benefits. And every attempt to undermine them is an attack on the people who built this country. Don't let these changes happen in silence. Be prepared. Be loud. Be relentless. The truth is, this isn't just about policy. It's about survival. And if you think the Trump administration's proposed changes to Social Security and disability benefits are just part of the usual political noise, you haven't been paying attention. These changes are real. They're dangerous. And they're aimed squarely at the most vulnerable people in this country. The proposals coming out of this administration are designed to do one thing: cut costs by cutting people off. Make the process harder. Make the requirements stricter. Make the system so complicated and intimidating that people give up before they even finish their application. That's the strategy. And if we let it happen, millions of Americans could find themselves without the lifeline they were promised. Let's be blunt. If you are in your 50s or 60s and your body is breaking down after decades of physical labor, this affects you. If you've developed a chronic illness and can't hold a full-time job anymore, this affects you. If you're caring for someone who depends on SSDI or SSI to survive, this affects you. The proposed changes would force older workers to jump through more hoops. Stricter reviews. More denials. More appeals. More delays. And what happens in that waiting period? Bills keep piling up. Rent doesn't pause. Medication isn't free. Life doesn't stop just because Washington is trying to streamline a system that already makes people feel like they're begging for help they paid into. This is why documentation is more important than ever. If you're applying for disability, don't assume anything. Don't rely on your medical condition to speak for itself. You need records, diagnoses, test results, statements from doctors, physical therapy logs, emergency room visits. Every detail matters because the more aggressive these reviews get, the more desperate they'll be to find a reason to deny your claim. And for those already on SSDI or SSI, your fight might not be over. These reviews could become more frequent. Redeterminations every year. Mandatory appointments. Threats to cut off your benefits if a form is late or incomplete. It's not enough just to qualify anymore. You'll have to defend your eligibility over and over again. That's what makes this moment so critical. This is when the rules are being rewritten. And if your voice isn't part of the conversation, the people writing the rules will act like you don't exist. But let's not forget, there is still a chance to change the trajectory. That delay in the COLA announcement because of the shutdown, that's not just a delay. It's a window. A window to demand something better. A chance to push the government to stop using CPIW, which ignores the very expenses that crush seniors and the disabled every month. CPIW tracks spending for urban wage earners, but how is that relevant to a retired factory worker with a heart condition? Or a woman in her 70s spending half her income on medications? CPIE is the only metric that makes sense. It reflects reality. Rising healthcare premiums, skyrocketing prescription drug costs, rent hikes, utility bills. It's not just more accurate, it's fair. Switching to CPIE could mean $300, $400, even $500 more per year in benefits. That's enough to cover a month of groceries. That's the difference between refilling your prescription or skipping it until the next check comes in. But Congress won't make the switch unless the pressure is undeniable. Unless the phones ring off the hook. Unless the emails flood in. Unless the people who built this system show up and demand what they're owed. Because here's the truth that every politician knows. Social Security recipients vote. They vote in every election, and their voices carry weight. Especially in states with massive retiree populations like Florida, Texas, California. If enough people speak out, if enough constituents demand CPIE, lawmakers will listen. They've done it before. They'll do it again. So don't wait. Don't assume someone else is making the call or sending the letter. This is the moment. Whether it's defending disability benefits from cruel cuts or fighting for a more accurate COLA formula, Your voice is the one that matters right now. Now let's talk about what you can actually do. First, document everything. If you're applying for SSDI or already receiving it, your best defense is evidence. Keep track of every symptom, every appointment, every test. Make copies of your records. Don't rely on memory, write it all down. Second, apply early. If you think you're eligible, don't put it off. The process already takes months, and it's only going to get harder. Get ahead of any new rules that might make qualifying more difficult. Third, look into other programs. Yes, SSDI and SSI are vital, but they're not your only options. You may qualify for SNAP, Medicaid, utility assistance, housing support. These programs exist to help you stretch your resources when the government cuts them. Fourth, get involved. Talk to your neighbors. Start a conversation at your local community center or church. Reach out to advocacy groups in your area. When people come together, things start to change. Fifth, and this can't be said enough, call your representatives. Don't just post online. Don't just yell at your television. Tell your elected officials clearly and firmly that you support the switch to CPIE, that you oppose cuts to disability benefits, and that you expect them to protect the programs you paid into. Because what's happening right now isn't just paperwork, it's personal. It's about real people, real lives. People who worked for decades, who paid into the system, who were told that when the time came, help would be there. And now, at the very moment when they need it most, they're being told to prove they deserve it all over again. That's not acceptable. These benefits are not a handout. They're a promise. And breaking that promise to save a few bucks on a budget line is a betrayal, plain and simple. If these changes go through, if cuts are made, if stricter reviews are implemented, if CPIE is ignored, millions of Americans will suffer. Silently, privately. Dignity stripped away by a system that once promised security. That's the core of what's happening here. A deliberate political decision to rebrand compassion as cost-cutting, to recategorize help as handouts, and to turn the lives of hardworking, aging, or disabled Americans into a spreadsheet problem. You work. You paid into Social Security every paycheck. You were told for decades that the system would be there when you needed it. And now you're being told to jump through hoops, to prove your disability again and again, to accept paltry COLA increases based on the wrong metric. It's a betrayal, and it's happening in plain sight. Under this administration, the push is clear. Limit who qualifies. Make it harder to apply. Question whether the disabled are really disabled enough. Review, until people give up and disappear from the system entirely. And don't kid yourself. This doesn't just affect other people. If you're middle-aged, working a physical job, dealing with chronic pain or an undiagnosed condition, you're a bad break away from needing SSDI. If you're caring for a parent, a partner, a child with a disability, you know how fragile the support system already is. Cutbacks don't just cut money. They cut lives apart. The proposed changes to Social Security disability insurance target those who can least afford to be targeted. And it's not just the physically disabled. It's also people with long-term mental health conditions, veterans with trauma, seniors whose bodies simply can't do what they used to. These are the people who will be hit first and hardest. Now let's talk about why the switch to CPIE matters so much. Because the COLA you get every year, that small increase, it's based on an outdated formula that doesn't reflect your reality. The CPIW focuses on urban workers, people still on the job, people who spend money differently than you do. It barely accounts for medical costs. It underestimates rent hikes. It assumes food prices are stable. It doesn't reflect the true cost of aging in America. That's why switching to the CPIE is not just smart, it's long overdue. CPIE factors in exactly what retirees and the disabled spend most of their money on. Healthcare, prescriptions, housing, transportation, and food. It doesn't ignore the fact that Medicare doesn't cover everything. It recognizes that inflation for seniors is different. But switching to CPIE doesn't just happen because it's logical. It only happens if lawmakers feel the pressure to act. And that pressure only comes from you, your calls, your emails, your presence. No one in Washington is going to hand this to you. has to be demanded. And let's not forget the states where this matters most. California, Texas, Florida. These states have the largest populations of Social Security and disability recipients. If people in those states rise up together, if they push their representatives, Democrat or Republican, to back CPIE and fight cuts, it changes everything. Those lawmakers listen to numbers. They pay attention to voters. And the retiree and disabled vote. It's one of the most powerful voting blocs in the country. That's why you cannot afford to sit this out. And if you're applying for disability right now or thinking about it, don't wait. Prepare. Get your paperwork in order. Because the moment these stricter rules are implemented, the process will only get harder. Delays will get longer. Reviews will get tougher. Denials will climb. The SSDI application process is already difficult. Most people are denied on their first try. They have to appeal. They have to fight. And now, under these new proposals, that fight could become even more brutal. So here's what you do. Keep every document, every test result, every doctor's note, every medication list. Document how your condition affects your daily life. The more you have on paper, the better your chance of being approved and staying approved. And while you're doing that, don't stop at SSDI or SSI. You might qualify for other support. SNAP benefits to help with food. Medicaid to help with medical costs. Local energy assistance programs to help with heating or cooling bills. These resources are lifelines. They aren't always easy to navigate, but they're worth it. Because if your benefits are reduced or delayed, you'll need backup plans. And don't do this alone. If you have a family member on disability, help them organize. If you're part of a faith group, a senior center, a community org, start conversations. The more people know what's coming, the better chance they have to fight back. Let's talk about what happens if we don't act. If CPIE doesn't get adopted, if SSDI gets slashed, if SSI becomes harder to qualify for, we'll see more seniors fall into poverty. More disabled Americans denied the help they need. More families forced into crisis. We'll see people who gave their lives to this country, who worked hard, who contributed, discarded because someone in Washington decided they cost too much. That is not acceptable. That is not the America we were promised. Social Security has survived world wars, recessions, government shutdowns, and political games for nearly a century. But it only survives because people refuse to let it be dismantled. Right now, you are the defense line. So what do you do from here? You get your paperwork in order. You verify your eligibility. You prepare your medical documentation. You apply if you haven't already. You call your representatives. You demand that CPIE be implemented. You oppose any move to slash SSDI or tighten eligibility for SSI. You look out for others. You help them understand what's happening. You tell them not to wait until it's too late. You share this video. You hit that like button. You leave a comment to tell your story, because when other people read it, they realize they're not alone. And you subscribe because every update matters. And missing even one could cost you critical information. This isn't about politics. It's about people. It's about defending what's yours. It's about refusing to be overlooked. Say loud. Stay informed. Stay ready. Because they are counting on your silence. Don't give it to them.